Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Attention, if you are a frustrated man who feels like he is not getting the results he wants in his life, health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth, then I've got a powerful free video training for you to help you become a strong, grounded man so you can unlock unlimited power in your life, business, and relationships. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get instant access to this training. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. If you want a Cliff Notes version of the best material that I've learned after 300 interviews on this podcast about being a stronger, more powerful man, then it's all here at kfmconfidence.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Chris Guillebeau. He's a New York Times bestselling author of the $100 Startup, The Happiness Pursuit, Born for This, The Art of Nonconformity, and now Side Hustle, From Idea to Income in 27 Days. What I also find very interesting about Chris is he's traveled over, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but over 190 countries. Is that accurate, Chris?
That is correct. 193 in total, and I've been to all 193.
All right, so we got quite the interesting man here. Chris, let's dive in with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's in relation to your book here, Side Hustle.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that kind introduction. Let's see, I guess for maybe about 9 years now, I've had this quote in my email signature that says, once in a while, it really hits people that they don't have to live their life in the way that they've been told. And that's kind of been the underlying philosophy of the Art of Nonconformity since I started way back in 2008. And it really kind of extends throughout all the different projects I do. The new project is called Side Hustle. It's all about helping people, go from idea to income in 27 days. So it's essentially trying to help people who don't necessarily want to be entrepreneurs or don't want to have a big startup, but they just want to have more freedom in their lives. So same kind of thing, you don't have to do things the way that you've been told or the way that other people have done them. You can do things your own way.
How is this going to be different from someone who wants to be an entrepreneur or is reading other books about building your business and getting funding and going shooting for the stars?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's great. This is probably not the book for you, actually. So this book is for just regular folks out there who maybe like their job. They actually like their company or their organization, or they may eventually want to quit and do their own thing, but they have a mortgage, they have a family, they have some responsibility. They can't just kind of take a huge risk and jump off a cliff. So it's about helping people create security in the situation that they're in. So it's not at all about going to get funding. It's about like looking within, what are the skills you already have? What are the resources that you can bring to bear on this project right now? It's a very accelerated time frame as well. It's like 27 days, right? So we're not talking about 6 months. We're not talking about a year. We're talking about right now.
Basically, within a month, let's get you a side hustle going.
Exactly.
I feel like there's a message out there that says it's entrepreneurship, and I think it makes people feel like, well, what if I really enjoy my job? Like, geez, I went to school, I got a postgraduate degree, like I really enjoy this, and I feel like I'm not going to be much now if I'm not an entrepreneur, if I'm not trying to build a company and sell it, or build a company that makes a ridiculous amount of money. And equally, there are a lot of people who want to build a business and make a great impact. But sure, what do you say for those folks listening who feel that tension that, man, I really enjoy my job?
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I wrote this book. I mean, that's what I was hearing over and over. I mean, I had a previous book called The $100 Startup, which is essentially about quitting your job. But yeah, I just kept hearing over and over from people that they feel like there's something wrong with them, or like they should feel ashamed because they like their job. And obviously that's kind of absurd, because there's all kinds of good companies and organizations. And then also think about those entrepreneurs, like presumably they're going to be hiring people, right? So, are the people that work for them second-class citizens? Like, hopefully not. Hopefully, like, everybody understands that there's more than one way to do what matters the most to you in life.
That's great. I think it's a message that needs to be put out there more. And thank you for putting this out there. And on your book, I was going to mention this off the air here, the $100 Startup. I bought that when I was just graduating college. So this is believe 2012 or so. And I read that, and I watched Scott Dinsmore, who unfortunately had passed away, but he has this talk about doing work you love, like how to do work you love. And it's just a fantastic talk. And it was this combination of that. And I think there was MJ DeMarco's book that just kind of showed me some more principles. But I mean, that book showed me that it was possible. That was basically it. It didn't give me all the tools I needed to be successful, but literally just that once you have that belief in yourself that like, look, this is something possible, and everyday people are out there doing incredible things with just $100. And here I am. I have $100. I have more than $100. Exactly. Why can't I go off and do something? And I had gone and quit my job at Target and as a manager and launched this whole thing, which is now it's doing quite well. We have over 15 people on the team.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
So glad to have you here. I love being able to bring people on the show who've been a part of the journey of myself and the people that we've gone on and impacted with the work we do. But let's more focus on you now. I just wanted to share that with you.
No, it's awesome. That's great. I mean, and let's say as well that you're the one who did the work. So I love being able to write books and create other resources that people, engage with and interact in. But ultimately, it's that person out there that has to do the work. So if you're listening to this, I would say don't just be inspired, right? Like hopefully ask yourself, what can I take from this that I can then apply to my life, just like Andrew did, just like I hear in these other stories. So good job.
Yeah. A question to ask is, you look at these people who are very successful or just doing what they want and achieving it, which that could be making $300, $1,000 or $1,500 extra a month. Like that could be someone's definition of crushing it rather than, this crazy company. Why not me is the question that I would ask myself when I read your book and some of these other materials or some of your talks or TED Talks. It really just got me thinking, why not me? And it's hard to, that question, whoa, why not me? If this guy can do it, he's regular, why not me? And it puts changing that question, it kind of reframes the situation and eliminates some of those excuses.
I think it really helps to highlight so-called regular people as opposed to like, here's this famous celebrity or this online blogger or whoever, right? Because then it's not relatable. But what I try to do in a lot of my work, from $100 startup now to side hustle school and everything else, is like just showing this barrage of examples of like, here's a person in middle America, here's an older woman, here's a younger couple, here's a guy who's a single dad. You're just kind of like going through like all this different stuff so that everybody can find somebody that they relate to and say, okay, just like you said, if they can do it, why not me?
Right. Yeah. Because you can take the guy in profile, a guy who's a billionaire, and it's difficult to comprehend like his story. He built a $1 billion company. It's unrelatable in some cases, but still very valuable, not discounting the work that they've done. What do you define as a side hustle versus a part-time job?
Oh, good. Yeah. Side hustle versus part-time job. So I think, this phrase is very much in the culture and people are talking about it in different ways. I'm trying to encourage people to create assets for themselves. So that's very different from saying I'm going to work 40 hours a week for somebody and then I'm going to go and work 20 hours a week for somebody else. When a lot of people think about side hustles, they think about things like driving for Uber. I don't think driving for Uber is terrible. Like I use Uber as a consumer. I just think it's a part-time job, essentially, because you're working in somebody else's ecosystem on their platform. They set the rules. They essentially define the compensation. So you have the benefit of flexibility, which is great. That is a real benefit. But still, it's essentially like a good part-time job. So much better, I think, to go through this process and actually create something that has the potential to earn money for you while you go to sleep. You wake up in the morning and you're like, I got a PayPal notification for $100. Well, I could have been driving for Uber for 3 hours or 4 hours, however many hours I needed to do that. But because I took the time and created this product, this service for sale, it's able to work for me. So that's what I want to help people do.
Right. Yeah. Uber control your pay too.
Right.
There is a ceiling to Uber. I mean, you're not necessarily going to just drive more unless they can change things, regulations. You're not in control. So it sounds like side hustle, you're more in control, whereas a part-time job, you're working underneath someone.
Yeah. More in control. And then also no income cap.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go. Can you paint a perfect picture of what it would look like for someone who has career that they're striving in, they enjoy it, and also a side hustle? What could that look like if you could share maybe a classic story that you enjoy sharing with others on your show?
Yeah, sure. So I always encourage people to look at the skills they already have as opposed to going out and acquiring a bunch of new skills. I think sometimes people on the outside, or haven't done this before, they're like, oh, I have to learn to code. Oh, I have to learn like this technological skill or whatever it is. Whatever you need to learn business-wise or technology-wise is not that difficult. What's far more valuable is the life experience you have what you have learned through your education, through your experience or whatever. So like in the book, I got a bunch of stories. I got a story of a guy who goes on a cruise and he comes back and he creates a little blog answering questions, like commonly asked questions that he had before, he went on the cruise, couldn't find answers to. And he ends up making $4,000 a month from this blog that he connects to Google AdWords. People come and click through, he gets a commission when he does that.
Right.
Somebody else, like the very first story of the book, this one isn't $4,000 a month, but it's a guy who writes reviews of fish tanks. So he's really into fish, right? He likes fish. That's his hobby.
That is very niche.
Yeah, but if you imagine if you have a fish tank or you're going to buy a fish tank, like what are you going to do? You're going to search like Google fish tank reviews, and it's not super competitive. Right? It's not like banking or something. So he writes these little reviews and connects it to Amazon. And the short version of the story is like he did this 3 years ago. 3 years ago, he set up this very little simple site, and he's still to this day getting a check for $700 in the mail every month. And he is a construction project manager. That's what he does for his day job. He's focused on that. But every month, $700 is arriving. And you can't live off of $700 a month in most parts of the world. But it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Pretty nice to just have it coming without you doing anything for it.
Yeah.
So those are just two examples of different things that people have done.
Very powerful. I think what's great in those stories is that you're using the skills you already have versus learning new skills. So you're taking your own experiences that you've had growing up, and there's other people out there who might have those same questions, and you're turning that into some sort of side income for yourself. Right. $700 a month. I mean, that's for someone that could be
it's huge. I mean, you can pay off debt with that. You can save exactly insurance. Think about your car payment. Think about all the different bills that you have. What could you cover with $700 a month? And I think I neglected to mention that the first guy, the cruise guy, he was a copywriter for his day job. And so that was critical in like using a skill he already had after he had this experience of the cruise to create the blog. And so think about what you're good at. If you're a teacher, you have certain skills. If you're an engineer, if you're an accountant, you have more than just the skills that you use for your actual job. Like there's a variety of things that you can probably do with those skills.
That's great. At what point do you think someone would transition? Like they actually are, like the guy $4,000 a month. I mean, if he was to actually do that full time, what could he get to 7? Could he get to 8?
Yeah, maybe. Right.
What questions would you advise someone to ask themselves around transitioning full time, just going entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, that sounds like that's what your journey was, as well. What questions would I ask? Well, I guess first of all, it's like, what's the minimum income that you need to have to feel somewhat comfortable? So maybe that's the same as matching your day job income. Maybe it's a little bit less. But let's see what the baseline is. When you get to that point in your side hustle income and you feel that that's somewhat predictable, so it's not just like a one-time success, but you feel as much confidence as you can have that, for the next 6 months, 9 months, hopefully a year and beyond, I'm going to be at least that level. I think that's important. And then maybe also asking yourself, okay, if I put more time into this, just like that example you just said, like maybe the guy cruise, if he puts more time in it, he can go to $6,000 or $7,000 or more $1,000 a month. If you feel like that's the answer, if you feel like you can say yes to that, then that's also a good sign. But I would also just encourage you to first and foremost, like think about your goals and like what are you trying to achieve with this? Because there are some people that do create assets at that level, but continue to keep their day job for a while because they like their job. So most important to figure out for yourself like what you're trying to do.
What is the, I guess, biggest story that's come in? Because I assume people are submitting stories, like everyday people, like on your show, the Side Hustle School. What's been one of the most like, wow, this guy is actually crushing it and he has another job and he's able to actually find that balance between both?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I'm trying to think about the biggest, like, it's like, how do you define that to me?
So we'll just go with income. We'll just,
sure.
Income per month.
Of course.
And most passive.
Of course.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Most passive. So there's a great story I did on a guy who's an Army veteran and comes home and he actually, does set out to make an app because he has some of those skills. And he makes an app, but then somewhere along the way, he starts documenting the process of like making an app and like starts a little kind of journal about that. And he signs up for some random affiliate program that he didn't even like know the name of or whatever. He just signed up for it because it seemed like a good idea. And he didn't get paid very much at all for a long time. And then somewhere around like 6 months in, I forget exactly, he starts getting like these really big checks from them. Like the first one's like $10,000. And he's like, oh my God, what is this? And it turned out that he had referred somebody who ended up making an app that did really, really well in the Apple store. And like that keeps like paying out. And I think within a year of once the payment started, he made $650,000 from it
in a year.
So
this is in a year. He made
$650,000. And so a couple of points on this. First of all, like, he's an Army veteran. He comes home. He uses that money to buy a house for himself and his family. He's kind of establishing himself. Still has the day job, right? Still doing that because he knew it wasn't necessarily reliable. Like, it's not predictable.
Right.
It was free money. But that's my second point. Not everything in this world is sustainable, and I think that's okay. Like, I think a lot of the questions that people ask about starting a business, like on the Shark Tank world or the startup world, it's like, is it sustainable? Is it scalable? I don't think that really matters, because, like, what about this guy? He made more than $500,000 almost by chance, but not really by chance, because he actually set up that affiliate program and connected it. And if he hadn't done that, that never would have, he never would have had that result. So does it matter that he's made $650,000 if it stops coming the next month? Like, who cares? He had that huge success. So he didn't quit the day job.
Right. Because he's not sure if I might make nothing from this next year.
Yeah, he's very conservative, in terms of finances, and I think that's wise.
There you go. I think when it comes to side hustle, a lot of people are going to think, well, like, I really just, an objection someone might have is I really just don't have extra time. Well, how am I going to do a side hustle? Yep. I'm already working 40, 50 hours a week. I'm really tired. I might have kids, or I might be in a relationship that demands more time. How do I find the time to actually create a side hustle? I'm sold on it, Chris, but I don't have the time.
Yep. Great objection. I mean, I basically wrote this book with that objection in mind.
Yeah.
And created the Side Hustle School podcast for busy people. And I pretty much say, like, I have this really clear targeting of, like, I'm making this for busy people, and I'm not making it for people who have, 30 to 40 hours a week to experiment, or who want to, be entrepreneurs right away or whatever. I'm asking people to commit, 20 to 30 minutes a day. And if you can do that over time, then you can build something like this. Now, there's no guarantee that it's going to make $600,000. Like, I don't mean to suggest that.
Right.
And I also don't mean to suggest that in 27 days, like, you can have, like, the entire business, but you can get up and running in that time. And you can begin to see your first sales coming in. And that to me is the empowering point. That to me, like, we've been using some big numbers, and that's fine. But I actually think it's really interesting when people get paid the first time for something. And I hear over and over, like, I'm on book tour and talking to audiences every night, and people say, like, the first time I got that PayPal notification, that was like $60, but, like, I felt like a different person. Like, I looked at myself differently, and I felt so empowered. I think that's great. I want to get people to that point, and then I feel like so much is possible after that. But if you've never had that before, like, that's what we need to get you to.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I remember there were 2 points. I remember when I had knowledge from in the blog, and I was sharing my personal experiences just in life, just kind of literally just ranting. It was really just a place for myself to just kind of vent. But I threw up Google AdWords, and I remember just decided to check it, and I had made 2 cents. Yeah. I'm not going to lie, that 2 cents was like making $2,000. Like, I understand. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I've got something. I made money, even though I had spent, probably hundreds of dollars to get to that 2 cents. But that 2 cents showed me that this is something that's possible.
Something is possible. Exactly. Possibility is powerful,
It started with there and started growing. And then I remember when I sold my first ebook for $15, I didn't know it was one of my friends who I just had coffee with earlier that day, but he was the one who bought it. And I just remember laying on my bed thinking, like, I'm going to be the next Steve Jobs. Like, this is it. I just felt so powerful. Like, oh my gosh, like, this is something that's going to happen. It was just an incredible feeling. So I completely agree. Just getting that first win.
Well done.
You really it opens your eyes to something that's just new possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like people don't focus on that enough. I feel like people focus too much on all these things about building the business and, like, what can we do to get that person started now? That's what I want to help people with. Even if the site doesn't look that great, right? Even if, like, something is broken, even if you wished, like, you had spent, another month working on it before you put it out, like, who cares? Let's help you get to that point. And then from there, like, so much more is possible.
I hear people talk about the website. Even my website, it hasn't been changed since, and I do plan on changing it, but it's just not top of mind right now. Yep. And when people say, why you haven't, I say, hey man, there's this really cool website that they haven't changed. It does $400 million a year. And I'll go to the Google CRAIGSLIST, Craigslist.
Right.
That is the most generic looking website ever, but they're doing $400 million a year. And if it's a great product, you offer a great service, you can do pretty well. It's not about the best looking websites. So I'm wondering here, like, if, I think people have a lot of ideas. They might, you say, like, use skills that you have. And so some people they might be older and they might have, man, I've had a plethora of different jobs and skill sets. I was in the military. I worked over here in the government. I worked here for a corporation, marketing. How can someone focus. They have so many ideas of where they could start, and maybe they try something for 2 weeks and then it doesn't work. They dip out. And maybe if they just, spent more time on it, something could have happened.
Sure.
What do you say for people who have a lot of ideas and they're struggling to focus on one side hustle?
Okay. So I've got this 5-week process that I try to take people through, and it's 27 days. Like every day you get a step. Day 1, step 1, day 2, step 2, et cetera. First week is all about like understanding where good ideas come from. Second week is about exactly what you just described. Like once I've got ideas, maybe I've got a bunch of ideas, I can't figure out what to do. That's essentially where you're like going to select what idea is best for you for now. And I think that second part is really key because people feel a lot of pressure over this decision. And they're like, if I get it wrong, I'm just going to be a failure for the rest of my life. Like we're talking about a pretty short-term decision here. So it's not like your life partner. It's not like what should I major in college if I go to college at all. It's not stuff like that. It's what's best for you right now. And there's an intuitive process that you can use. It's in the book called the Side Hustle Selector. The short version of it is you're essentially going to like write down your list of ideas and then rank them according to some criteria: feasibility, profit potential, and your own motivation. Like how excited are you about this idea? Very often, like an idea is going to emerge, like a winner is going to emerge from this process, which, as I said, takes 10 minutes, not super long at all. And then you know what to do. If for some reason you still don't have an idea or you don't know what to choose, I would say at a certain point, you just have to pick something. At a certain point, you just have to say, like, I'm going to do this one for the next month. And, I'm going to commit to it for the 27 days, or if I need 2 months, that's like some short period of time. And at the end of that time, if it's working and I'm still excited about it, then I'll keep doing it. If not, I'll choose something else. But if I'm struggling with the 2 weeks thing about how I do something for 2 weeks, then I drop that and go on to something else. Then I think you should commit for a little bit of time, just so you can give it a fair chance.
And when would you tell someone to pull a plug? Because I'm sure you hear such varying stories where someone was able to get started very quickly versus someone where they spent 2 years making no money, 3 years making no money, and finally it really started taking off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a magic, like here's the point in time where you do that. I think in terms of like the project lifespan, it's like, okay, if you have the product and the service developed for the most part, but people aren't buying it, is there something you can do to change how you're positioning it or find different people? Like what can you tweak and change? I think the situation you want to avoid is just that classic definition of insanity of like doing the same thing over and over, but just kind of hoping that something will be different. Right? That's what you want to avoid. If you keep trying new stuff, then I think might as well keep going, right? As long as you're still motivated to do it. Okay. But life is short. So if you lose your motivation to do something, might as well move on to something else, right? Because again, like you don't want to just toil away at something that's not working and you're not excited about anymore.
Right. Is that an important element of the side hustle? It's something that you actually look forward to. 8-10 hours a day that work, someone has a serious job. You got to look forward to this thing, right?
You have to. I think it's really important. I think that's why it's important to do something a little bit different for your side hustle than you do for your job. Like there are a few people out there that are like, I'm an accountant by day and I do people's taxes, on the side. But most people are going to be happier if they're like, this is what I do during the day, and then I have something else that I'm doing, a different kind of different like use of my brain, different focus. Right. Maybe it's something more creative, or if you have like a creative day job, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's something really analytical or logical.
Have you ever felt like you weren't the strong, grounded man that you know you're capable of becoming? Like there's something more inside of you, but you don't know how to get it out. Me too. Years ago, I was broke, sleeping on my brother's couch, and just got out of a serious breakup that left me on the floor for months. Now, I have a multiple six-figure business. I'm in the best shape of my life, have an abundant dating life, and live on the beach here in San Diego. I want you to break through too and create the life that you want. And because people kept asking me so many questions, I've created this free video training series on becoming a strong, grounded man so that you can have more freedom, love, and connection in your life. I'll also teach you how to build real backbone to boost your masculinity as a man so that you can have more respect, power, and confidence personally and professionally. Simply go to kfmconfidence.com to get this training. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. Also, I share the #1 conversation that your father never had with you about women. That will be a major wake-up call for 90% of you and will improve the quality of your relationships forever. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get this free training today. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
How important is community in building a side hustle? It seems like there's a lot of people who have the side hustle, but there's also a community attached to it that goes to the event or goes to the workshop, or they tell their friends for referrals, or they're buying the product or pre-launching the product to this community. Or is it irrelevant?
Yeah, I don't know if it's irrelevant. I do think it's kind of case by case. You mentioned Scott Dinsmore earlier. I mean, he was a good friend of mine as well. And he really, really focused on community in his work. And I think that's probably a big part of his legacy and what he's known for. So, and I try to do the same thing in terms of my emphasis on community. At the same time, I think there's some projects that I feature in the book or elsewhere that you really can just do on your own. And that's okay. Like, you can just use your own skills, like figure stuff out, put it up, and that's all right. Like the fish tank guy. I don't know that community was super important in that example.
Yeah.
So I really think it just depends on the project and on you.
Sure. How do you, because you've written great books, and it seems like you've been doing a book. Is that every year? Something
like that. Yeah. Every other year.
And it seems like they're New York Times bestseller, like, and then, this is not your interview, not for this day, but not, week, month, like you've been interviewing for you've been on a lot of podcasts. This ain't your first rodeo. Sure. And so what I'm wondering is, I know that when you started, like this was likely, the most exciting thing ever in the world. And then with time, even though it was once so exciting, I'm sure there are moments where it can become dull, almost becoming work. What do you do to keep that fire alive with something that you started out of passion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, for the most part, I'm actually still very excited and very motivated.
Right.
I really do feel fortunate that I like what I do, and I get up and I'm excited to work on my projects. And when I finish a project, I'm like, okay, what's next? Like, that's just kind of how I'm hardwired. And so I find a lot of enjoyment from the work itself, which I think is important.
Yeah.
But I've also changed how I do a lot of it over the years, and that also has helped. Like this year, I started the podcast, and it was a totally new medium, for me. Like a lot of you guys have been doing it for a while, but it was good for me to explore that. And on the book tour this time, I'm doing 100 cities, which is the most I've ever done. So I like to just kind of take on new challenges and be willing to evolve as I go along.
Wow, 100 cities. Is this in a short? Is this like over the winter, or is this over a year or several years?
No, it's over about 4 to 5 months. So it's pretty accelerated for a while. Then I take a bit of a break. Then I get back to it. So yeah, it's not like a city a day for 100 days, but it's also not spread out over a year.
A lot of people might say, why are you going to physically travel and go through the stress of, you're probably not eating sometimes the best of food at night, or being able to work out when you want and things like that. So it does take a toll on your body on the health front. Paying attention to the time. And why did you choose to do that when you could just continue to do this, where you're on a podcast and speaking to thousands of guys right now?
Sure. Well, it's an honor to speak to the thousands of guys. I appreciate all the guys who are listening.
Right.
But I guess I also like meeting the guys and the women at the events that I do. And I do feel that can be like a totally different element. And like we were just talking about community, I guess community is really important to me. That's why I'm doing it. And pretty much all of my work is also informed through that process. Like a lot of things I do wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done this other thing. So like when the first book came out, I went to all 50 states, every province in Canada, like to meet my readers. And along the way, I met all these like cool people who were accidental entrepreneurs. And that's what led to $100 Startup, essentially, because I'm like, everybody's writing about Silicon Valley and this model. Yeah. Nobody's actually writing about like regular folks, you know, like yourself and others that are creating freedom, in their own way. So I feel like if I didn't do that, like, I don't know if I'd have the other stuff. So I feel like it's all connected.
That's great. And that's beautiful. And I appreciate the hustle so much. And briefly, I do want to touch on this. You traveled 193 plus countries. There's probably a few more countries you have to go to. Are you going to hit those? And then secondly, what have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned about life through your travels? And even if there's some lessons on business there too.
Yeah, sure. So there actually are 193 countries in the world. So my goal was to go to all of them by my 35th birthday. That was 3 years ago, now 4 years ago. It's been a little while. There's not new countries that come out very often, like fortunately. There was only one country, South Sudan, that came out like during the
they launched
11.
It. Yeah, they did a launch for the country.
Exactly.
Like a pre-launch videos.
Yeah, the launch didn't go very well actually for the.
Oh man, they need affiliates.
Exactly. Yeah, very good, very good. They had enemies. That was kind of the problem. The opposite of affiliates.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was my goal. So if more come out, then I'll go. But For me, the biggest lesson, I mean, I learned a lot of stuff. It would be really hard to, be concise in like a minute or two, but I would say probably the biggest stuff was internal. It was about like my own confidence and belief in myself. And, I used to be pretty insecure and anxious, and I'm still kind of anxious, but now I've had a bunch of challenges that I've gone up against, and I've like asked myself, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, well, like some bad things have happened, but I'm still here, still alive. So I'm going to keep going.
Beautiful, beautiful lessons. I want to respect your time here, Chris. It's been a pleasure having you here on the show and sharing the wisdom from Side Hustle and all the books that you've learned, that you've read. And so for those listening here, check out Side Hustle. Go to Amazon, and when you do, you'll see all the other books that I mentioned around similar topics. All very good books. I think, Chris, you can see that I have many of your books behind me.
Awesome, man.
Gone through all of them. Anytime I see you're coming out with a book, I pre-order it. It's got to come in the mail. Also, chrisguillebeau.com, and then World Domination Summit. How many people were at the last event?
Let's see, we're at about 1,500 right now. It depends on which year, because I'm not doing a different theater. But between 1,000 and 2,000 for the most part are coming.
I highly recommend his event. You guys can learn more about what World Domination Summit is. Just go to Google, throw it in. You can see all kinds of great videos on YouTube. And please follow Chris Guillebeau's work. He's had an impact on myself personally, and was literally an inspiration for Knowledge for Men back in the day when I wanted to do something and create more freedom in my life. So guys, check out Chris Guillebeau's work. Chris, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'm honored to be here to be able to have a platform for you to promote some of the work that you've done. It's great.
Dude, you are awesome. Thank you. And it's an honor for me too. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.